The grand ballroom of the Silvercrest Hotel shimmered with a warmth that seemed almost deceptive. Crystal chandeliers hung like captured constellations, scattering flecks of light over tuxedos, glittering gowns, and champagne flutes that never seemed to empty. The city's most powerful and privileged had gathered for the annual Dawson Foundation Gala, an event known not only for its lavishness but for its unspoken competition of wealth and status. At the center of it all stood Claire Dawson, the woman everyone had come to see. Her midnight blue gown flowed like liquid silk, hugging her figure in a way that made her look both powerful and untouchable. Tonight was supposed to be the pinnacle of her career, her first major public appearance since taking over her late father's company as CEO. She had worked tirelessly for years, earning every promotion through skill and sheer willpower, determined to prove she wasn't just the daughter of a legend. But even under the glittering lights, Claire could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes. Some watched with admiration, most with envy, and a few with concealed malice. Every handshake came with a whisper. Every smile hid a knife. She's too young. She only got there because of her father. Let's see how long before she fails. The words floated through the air like perfume, poisonous, sweet, and suffocating. Claire had learned to smile through it, to hold her chin high and her voice steady. But deep down, a small, lonely part of her wondered how long she could keep pretending it didn't hurt. As she slipped away from the crowd for a moment of quiet, the sound of laughter drifted behind her, sharp, mocking, unmistakably directed her way. Turning, she found herself face to face with 3 women from her company's marketing division, Vanessa, Brooke, and Tessa, women who had once been her colleagues before her promotion. They were beautiful, polished, and ruthless. "Well, look who it is," Vanessa drawled, swirling her wine. "Our new queen of Dawson Industries." Brooke smirked. "You clean up nice, Claire. Must be easy when you're spending the company's money." Claire's heart skipped, but she forced a polite smile. "Good evening. I'm glad you could make it." "Oh, please," Tessa snorted. "You don't have to pretend. We all know you didn't invite us out of kindness. You just wanted to show off." Her friends laughed, circling Claire like wolves scenting blood. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice dripping with venom. "You know, it's funny. I remember when you were just the intern running coffee orders. Now you're strutting around like you own the place." Claire's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice calm. "I earned this position, Vanessa. Every late night, every deal, every—" Before she could finish, Vanessa's hand darted out, grabbing the delicate fabric of Claire's gown. "Earned it?" she hissed. "Or inherited it?" And with a sudden tug, the sound of tearing silk sliced through the laughter and music. Gasps filled the air as the blue satin ripped from her waist to her thigh, exposing the fragile lining beneath. For a moment, the entire ballroom froze. Then came the laughter, cruel, shrill, and merciless. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. Claire stood paralyzed, her cheeks burning, eyes wide with horror. She clutched the torn fabric against her body, but the damage was already done, not just to her gown, but to her pride, her composure, her dignity. The whispers turned into giggles, and the giggles into a chorus of humiliation. Somewhere, a waiter turned away. The security guards hesitated, unsure what to do. And in that suffocating moment, Claire realized that power meant nothing without respect, and respect could be stolen in an instant. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She wanted to disappear, to run and never look back. But before she could move, a deep, commanding voice cut through the noise. "Enough." The single word rolled across the ballroom like thunder. The laughter died instantly. The crowd parted, and through the sea of glittering gowns and suits, a man walked forward, tall, broad-shouldered, his expression carved in stone. He wore no tuxedo, just a simple jacket and dark jeans, out of place among the wealthy elite. Yet his presence demanded attention. Claire blinked, her breath catching as the stranger stopped in front of her. His eyes, sharp and steady, flicked over the torn gown before locking onto the women responsible. "You think this is funny?" he asked, his voice low but dangerous. Vanessa's smirk faltered. No one spoke. The man took off his jacket and placed it gently around Claire's shoulders. "You should be ashamed," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "All of you." For the first time that night, Claire felt seen, not as a CEO, not as a symbol, but as a person. She didn't know who this man was or why he had stepped in, but in that moment, his quiet strength felt like the only solid thing in a room built on cruelty. And though she didn't know it yet, the stranger's intervention would change both of their lives forever. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Every glittering eye in the ballroom shifted toward the man standing between Claire and her tormentors. The music had stopped, the laughter evaporated, and even the servers froze mid-step. The stranger's presence radiated authority, not the kind that came from wealth or titles, but the kind born from strength, decency, and quiet confidence. His name was Ethan Cole, though few in that room knew it. He was a single father and a mechanic from the working side of town, invited to the gala because his daughter, Lily, had recently won a scholarship funded by Dawson Industries, the very company Claire led. He'd come tonight wearing his only jacket, feeling awkward but proud, wanting to thank the CEO in person. But the moment he saw her humiliation unfold, something inside him ignited. He didn't care who she was or how rich her bullies looked, all he saw was a woman being torn apart while everyone else stood by. Ethan stepped forward, his eyes narrowing on Vanessa and her friends. "I asked a question," he said, his voice calm but cutting through the air like a blade. "You think this is funny?" Vanessa's painted lips parted, but no words came out. Brooke tried to laugh it off, but Ethan's glare silenced her instantly. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Tessa snapped finally, attempting to reclaim control. "This is a private." Ethan took one step closer, and she flinched. "No," he interrupted. "This is a room full of cowards watching cruelty and calling it class." A collective murmur rippled through the guests. Ethan turned slightly, his gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. "You all wear your diamonds and drink your champagne, but not one of you had the courage to stop this." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth, raw and undeniable. He took off his jacket and gently draped it over Claire's shoulders, shielding her torn gown. She looked up at him through tear-streaked lashes, her breath trembling. For the first time in a long while, someone had stood for her, not against her. Vanessa stammered, her voice small. "It was just a joke." "A joke?" Ethan's tone hardened. "A joke is when everyone's laughing." She wasn't. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between them. A few of the men who had been chuckling seconds ago now looked ashamed. The band members exchanged glances, unsure whether to resume the music or stay frozen in attention. Claire felt her heart pound in her chest, the humiliation fading beneath a rising wave of awe. This stranger, a man who owed her nothing, had turned the entire power dynamic of the room upside down. She wanted to thank him, but her voice failed her. Ethan wasn't finished. He turned back to the three women and said evenly, "You owe her an apology." Vanessa scoffed, trying to recover her poise. "You can't tell us what to," but before she could finish, Ethan's gaze locked on her with such quiet intensity that the words died in her throat. "You're right," he said softly. "I can't. But maybe your conscience should." The simple statement hit harder than any threat could. Slowly, reluctantly, Vanessa lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. Brooke and Tessa followed suit, their voices barely audible. Ethan nodded once, satisfied, then turned back to Claire. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. His tone softened in an instant, protective and kind. She nodded weakly, still clutching his jacket around her. "Thank you," she whispered, the two words heavy with emotion. He offered a faint smile. "Don't thank me. Just promise me you won't let people like that make you forget who you are." A wave of applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing louder. Some clapped out of guilt, others out of genuine respect. The host rushed forward, trying to smooth things over, but it was too late. The entire dynamic of the evening had changed. The elite had witnessed something real, integrity in its purest form, and it left them shaken. As the crowd slowly dispersed and the music resumed, Ethan quietly guided Claire toward a side hallway away from the flashing cameras. "You shouldn't have to stand alone in a room like that," he said quietly. She met his gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, a fragile connection born out of chaos. In that single night, their worlds, one built on steel and sweat, the other on glass and power, had collided. And neither of them realized it yet, but the moment Ethan Cole stepped forward, both of their lives had changed forever. The city skyline stretched before them like a bed of diamonds scattered across black velvet. The cool night air wrapped around Claire Dawson as she leaned against the balcony railing, Ethan's jacket still draped over her shoulders. Inside, the gala had resumed, the guests pretending nothing had happened, but Claire couldn't bring herself to return. The music, the laughter, the shallow smiles, all of it felt distant now, like echoes from another world. She exhaled slowly, her breath trembling, the humiliation still clinging to her like a shadow. She had faced boardrooms full of ruthless executives and investors who tried to break her, but nothing, had stripped her down like that moment tonight. Ethan stood a few steps away, his broad frame silhouetted against the moonlight. He didn't speak, didn't push her to talk, just waited, calm and steady, the way only a man who understood pain could be. "You didn't have to do that," Claire said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "They would have stopped eventually." Ethan shook his head, his expression unreadable. "No. They wouldn't have. People like that don't stop until someone makes them." His tone wasn't harsh, just matter of fact, but it carried the weight of experience, the kind earned from years of fighting battles no one applauded. Claire turned to face him, her eyes glistening. "You embarrassed yourself for me. In front of everyone." Ethan gave a faint smile. "I've been covered in grease, yelled at by customers, and scraped under cars for 20 years. A few rich people staring doesn't scare me." His attempt at humor brought the smallest curve to her lips. "You don't belong here," she said softly, then quickly added, "I mean that in a good way. You're real." Ethan shrugged. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix what's broken." His words hit her deeper than he knew. "Fix what's broken." Claire looked down at the ballroom below, the glitter, the perfection, the lies. "Everything looks perfect here," she murmured, "but underneath, it's all cracks. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, people would respect me. But they only see what they want." "The girl who got lucky." Her voice wavered. "My father built this company from nothing. When he died, everyone said I couldn't fill his shoes. I thought if I just kept proving myself, they'd stop doubting me." Ethan studied her quietly, his eyes gentle. "You don't need to prove yourself to people who are waiting for you to fail," he said. "You just need to keep standing." Claire blinked, the tears threatening again. "That's easy for you to say." Ethan gave a small, knowing smile. "Is it?" He leaned against the railing beside her. "I lost my wife 5 years ago. Car accident. Since then, it's just been me and my little girl, Lily. I work 2 jobs to keep her in school. People look at me and see a guy who doesn't belong, someone to pity or ignore. But I don't care what they think. I care what she thinks. She sees me as a hero, so I try to be one." For a long moment, Claire said nothing. She stared at him, realizing how easily he spoke about things she'd buried deep inside, loss, fear, loneliness. His words stripped away her armor until she felt human again, not a CEO, not a symbol, just a woman trying to hold herself together. "Your daughter's lucky to have you," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "I'm lucky to have her. She reminds me that even broken people can build something beautiful." Claire turned her gaze back to the stars, her heart heavy yet strangely lighter. The night that began in humiliation had led her to something unexpected: honesty. Ethan hadn't just offended her, he'd reminded her that strength wasn't about appearing flawless. It was about standing tall when everything tried to push you down. When she finally spoke again, her voice was soft but sure. "Maybe you were meant to be here tonight." Ethan smiled faintly, glancing at her. "Maybe we both were." And for the first time in a long while, Claire felt something stir in her chest: hope, fragile but real. The kind of hope that came when two wounded souls crossed paths and began, unknowingly, to heal each other. The following morning, the city woke to headlines that no one could ignore. Every major news outlet, blog, and social media feed was flooded with the same story: mechanic defends humiliated CEO, turns gala into a lesson on humanity. The video, secretly recorded by one of the guests, had gone viral overnight. It showed the moment Ethan Cole stepped between Claire and her bullies, wrapping his jacket around her and commanding the room to apologize. Millions watched it, millions shared it, and millions praised the unknown man who dared to stand for decency when everyone else looked away. Ethan, however, had no idea. He was back in his small garage by sunrise, wiping oil from his hands, thinking about how surreal the previous night had been. Meanwhile, Claire Dawson sat in her office at the top floor of Dawson Industries, her phone buzzing non-stop. Messages poured in, from journalists, employees, and strangers who admired her composure. But she knew the real hero wasn't her. The man who had changed everything wasn't sitting behind a glass desk. He was probably somewhere covered in grease and sweat, completely unaware that he had become a symbol of courage. She watched the video again, Ethan's calm, unwavering strength, the way he shielded her without hesitation. For the first time in years, Claire felt something stronger than pride. She felt gratitude, deep and humbling. That afternoon, she made a decision. Without alerting her assistants or her PR team, she drove across town to the industrial district where Ethan's shop stood, a small, weathered building with a hand-painted sign that read, "Cole Auto Repairs." The sound of tools clinking filled the air. When she stepped inside, Ethan looked up, surprised. "Miss Dawson?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "You didn't have to come all the way here." Claire smiled softly. "Maybe I did." She took a deep breath. "You gave me back something last night I didn't even realize I'd lost, my dignity. I wanted to thank you properly." Ethan looked a little uncomfortable, scratching the back of his neck. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone decent should have done." Claire shook her head. "You'd be surprised how few people do the decent thing when it matters." Before he could respond, a small voice piped up from the corner. "Daddy?" A little girl with pigtails peeked out from behind a stack of tires, her face bright with curiosity. "You're the lady from the video," she squealed, running up to Claire. Ethan's eyes widened. "Lily," he said quickly, but Claire only laughed, kneeling down to the child's level. "And you must be Lily. Your dad talks about you." Lily nodded proudly. "He said you're really smart and really brave." Claire's eyes softened. "He's the brave one, sweetheart." The child beamed, and Ethan watched the exchange with a tenderness he couldn't hide. Claire stood and looked around the small shop, the worn-out tools, the cracked tiles, the leaking ceiling. "You keep this place running all by yourself?" she asked. "Mostly," Ethan replied. "It's not much, but it's ours." She hesitated, then said, "Let me help you fix it." Ethan frowned. "I don't need charity." She smiled faintly. "It's not charity. It's partnership. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, one that supports single parents, small business owners, and teaches ethics in corporate spaces. I want you to help me run it." Ethan blinked, stunned. "Me?" Claire nodded. Who better than the man who reminded the world what integrity looks like? Weeks passed, and the Dawson Cole Foundation became the talk of the city. Together, They used the viral moment not for fame but for change. Scholarships were offered to children like Lily. Seminars on workplace kindness and courage spread nationwide. The same ballroom where Claire had been humiliated reopened its doors for the foundation's first charity event. Only this time, the applause wasn't for wealth or status, but for compassion. As the lights dimmed and the crowd rose to their feet, Claire glanced at Ethan standing beside her. "Funny how one night can change everything," she whispered. Ethan smiled, his voice low. "Guess we both learned something. Strength isn't about standing alone. It's about standing for someone." Claire looked into his steady eyes, feeling warmth bloom in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone on that stage. She felt whole. And as the applause roared around them, she reached for his hand, the same hand that had once lifted her from humiliation, and held on tight, knowing their story was only just beginning.